Hi, welcome to the Soaring 20s PB IGTV Episode 2. My name's Jen Malia, and I'm the author of Too Sticky, Sensory Issues with Autism. And today I'm going to be joined by author Carrie Finison, who's also a member of Soaring 20s PB, and she's going to be telling us about her new book that was just out yesterday, Dozens of Doughnuts. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Carrie to the interview.
Hi, Jen.
Carrie. Thanks for joining us. So we're really excited to hear about Dozens of Doughnuts, and thought maybe we could start with you telling us a little bit about your book, and then we can go from there and talk a little bit about your journey publishing and all of that. So thank you so much for coming, Carrie.
Yes, that sounds great. I'm hearing a lot of feedback on my own voice. Do you know what that is? Do you hear that?
It sounds good right now.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to just ignore that then. I think it was my audio was turned up too high. So I am Carrie Finison, and I'm the author of Dozens of Doughnuts. Dozens of Doughnuts is about a bear named Luann who is making donuts in preparation for hibernation. So as we know, when bears hibernate, they in the fall, they need to eat a lot of food to kind of get ready for that in the winter. And so so she is making donuts, and while she's doing that, her neighbors begin to drop by. And so you can see on the cover all of her little woodland friends who eventually come by. And so one by one, her friends come, and she ends up dividing each batch of 12 donuts evenly between her friends who are there. So first it's 2, and then it's 3, and then 4, and then 6. And I'll just show you a page in the illustrations where you can kind of see this. So here she has her batch of 12 donuts that she's super excited about eating and sharing with Woodrow, and she divides them evenly. So now they each have 6. And then ding dong, there's someone at the door, and her other neighbor stops by, and so her 2 other neighbors end up eating those 12 donuts together and not saving any for her. And of course, she reacts the way you think a bear might react, which is not well. But without giving away the ending, I will say that it turns out happily in the end, and she does get some donuts. So you can see there's a little, it's about sharing and friendship. There's a little bit of math in there for kids who want to look for that. A lot of times kids wonder sort of after reading the book, you know, who ate the most donuts, and how was each batch of donuts divided up? And, you know, I always ask them, how many do you think you could eat if you came to the donut party at the end? So, so it's just a fun book that has a little math and some rhyme and friendship and sharing.
That sounds great. It sounds like you kind of built the math concept in there, so that's part of the narrative, which is a lot different than when we get, you know, books that are just explicitly teaching math. Whereas, you know, you build it into the narrative so that kids can learn math naturally rather than, you know, just more directly. So I don't know if you have more to say about that, like how you came up with that, like what you may have had that in mind when you were putting together the narrative, that there was going to be this sort of underlying STEM concept. So maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So so first of all, I think that this type of math especially is really important to kids sort of innately. I know from my own kids, they are super interested in how much of a treat everyone gets. And they will even get out the kitchen scale and like weigh cookies to make sure that the cookies are the same size. So it's not, for them, it's not even just the same number. It's like, how much do they weigh? And so I felt like that was something that is just sort of very naturally interesting to kids. And then, you know, my own background. So I worked at an educational software company before I started writing my own stuff. And so I did work on like a math facts program. And I worked on some science programs and some reading and language arts stuff. So I feel like a lot of my stuff has this little sort of core element of fact or learning or something in it. And that's usually what sort of sparks me into writing a story. So I think that this idea of sharing and dividing things evenly was sort of in my head already. And then at one point I had brought the story to a critique group. I think at that point I had the donuts divided among 2 and then 3 and then 4. And there was a teacher in the group and she said, oh, if you can get to 6, this would be really useful, like in classrooms, because we can really talk about 12 and the factors of 12. So I was like, okay, I'm totally going to do that, right? I hadn't necessarily been thinking that way. I'd just been thinking about, you know, enjoying the story, but I think making it useful to teachers is great. And so I quickly added that as a scene, and it made the book kind of long. It's actually a 40-page book. I think it probably couldn't fit in the 32 pages the way it's paced, but it ended up working out really well. So now we do have 2, 3, 4, and 6 as the dividing factors there. So
yeah, that's really great background. And it's nice that you were able to get feedback from a teacher in the process of writing the book as well. When, you know, by getting that feedback, you were able to make revisions that made more sense, you know, in terms of helping kids and teachers in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really lucky that, I mean, the development of the book, you know, any picture book takes a long time. And I had brought it to, you know, I have my own regular critique groups who've seen it many, many times, thank goodness. And they're all really helpful. And this was actually at a conference that I went to that was like a writing retreat. And so I think just sharing your work, you know, widely can really help get lots of different perspectives. And occasionally you get one of those little nuggets of ideas that are just amazing and great and so helpful and like send you off on a totally new direction. That's really good. So it worked out.
Yeah, maybe if we could talk a little bit more about your publication journey in general, since we already sort of touched on a little bit, but maybe you could start from just how you came up with the idea, and then, you know, was it a long road to publication, or was it, you know, was it the first manuscript you wrote, all those kinds of things?
Right. So I started writing, so as I mentioned, before I started writing my own sort of creative stuff, I worked at an educational software company and I was a producer there. And so my job was, I mean, I had tons of jobs. I had to like write software specifications and sometimes record audio and like make teachers guides for the software. Sometimes I would take it out into classrooms and play test stuff, which was really fun. And also part of that job was writing content for students to read within both within the software and then like supplemental sort of printed materials that the teacher would print out for them. And I'd always really loved that part. And so when I left that job, when my son was born, so that was 2005, I ended up doing that writing work, mostly the writing work on a freelance basis. So I was writing content for that company and then also some different educational software publishers. And meanwhile, my son was, you know, he had been born and we were reading a lot together, and we were reading a lot of children's magazines actually, and like Baby Bug and Ladybug magazine. And so I started to think, as I was reading those, I was like, well, maybe I could write these. I mean, some of the content that's in there, it's not very long. And at that time I was like, I can't focus on anything that's really long because I have, you know, a 2-year-old or whatever. But this is really short, so maybe I can write that. So I started out writing stuff for magazines that were just these sort of 4-line or 8-line little poems. And rhyme is kind of how everything came to me. So that's how I got started writing in rhyme. I had never really written any rhyme before that, and but it was a really great way to practice. And so then I kind of, as we moved up and he started reading longer and longer things, I was like, oh, maybe I can try writing a picture book. You know, if I can write this 8-line poem, I can maybe write, you know, a little bit of a longer piece. And so I started writing picture books, and I started going to conferences, and then fast forward to 2015. So I'd been doing that. So I probably started that in like maybe 2008, 2009, 2015. I started the idea for this book, and I actually got the idea for the title from a friend of mine who's in one of my critique groups. Had a book that she was working on, a story she was working on called Double the Dinosaurs, right? And I really love like sounds and just playing with words. And I really loved that title because it just seemed so fun to me and so catchy, you know? And so one day, a lot in the early morning, this is always early morning when I'm like waking up that I get these ideas. So I was like, double the donuts. Ooh, that would be a really fun story. But then I was thinking about the story, it seemed too similar to the idea that my critique partner was working on. I couldn't really think of a way to make it really different from hers. So, but then I was like, well, what if we replace double with dozens? Because donuts come in a dozen, right? So that makes sense. So then I had the title, and I was like, oh, I've got to come up with some kind of story to go with this title. So where did the bear come from in the woods making donuts? I don't know. That just sort of popped into my head. And I just was off to the races with the first draft. And the storyline, you know, hasn't changed all that much since the first draft in terms of there's always been a bear who's making donuts and some animals come and try to take it. At first it was animals actually stealing the donuts, but eventually it became, you know, friends coming to the door and asking to share. And so that was 2015 when I started it. And then let's see, I, you know, had it critiqued. There was like time period, like 9 months when I just put it away and didn't even work on it at all. I brought it to different conferences. I got editor critiques on it. I think I had an agent interview one time and she critiqued it. So I really got a lot of feedback over the course of like several years on the manuscript. And then I had an agent, and she was kind of sending out different pieces for me, and we were getting really close, but nothing had gotten accepted yet. And then finally she said like, well, what about that donut story? I always really liked that donut story. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll take that out and see, you know, should I change it? Is it ready to go? And so I got it ready to go, and she sent it out in, I think it was the late summer of like 2017. And it got, you know, a really good response from a few editors, and especially one, Stephanie Pitts at Putnam, really liked it. But she actually suggested a lot of cuts to it before she wanted to, you know, buy the piece, because I think she wanted to kind of show me her vision for it. And so she ended up cutting quite a bit of the text that I had written. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, it's a lot of text to cut. But it actually worked out really well. And it made me realize like how much more I could rely on the illustrations to do the work in the story. And so I said, yeah, let's go in that direction, and I'll work with you. So so then we started, and so that was like fall of 2017. And you know, publishing takes a long time, and because the book is about a bear and it's hibernation, it has kind of a fall theme. So I think they were thinking of it as sort of a fall release. And it was kind of too late to get it. It was like just under the wire to get it for fall of 2019. So they ended up pushing it to fall of 2020. And then they ended up moving the release date up a little bit to have it ready like in time for school release. So I think originally it was supposed to be in like September or October or something, but they pushed it up to July so that it would be ready for school. So that's kind of how the story like meandered its way to publication.
That's really great. I liked what you said about how you had to, or at least you had to consider cutting a lot of the text. And I think that's something that a lot of writers are, you know, hesitant to do because they're like, you know, you get so deeply involved with your text, it's hard to sort of, you know, to let go with some of that. But it sounds like when you did that, that's when the story really, you know, evolved into something, like making that decision to take the text out and to let some more of the illustrations tell the story worked out really well for you. I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, at that time, there was kind of like almost like two refrains in the book, and one of them, so she ended up cutting or suggesting that we cut one of them, and I think it really helped because it ends up making the one that's left all that much more strong. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes having fewer words makes the words that are left behind more powerful in a way.
And we did have one question come in while you were talking, so I'm just going to ask it. It's from Brianne.
Oh, it's from Brianne. She's the illustrator. Hi, Brianne.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Brianne. That's right. Okay. How long have you been with your critique partners and how did you find them?
How did I find them? That's a really good question. So I have a couple of online groups, and then I have some in-person critique partners. So my first online group is a poetry and rhyming group called the Poets Garage. And the way that I found them was someone who was already in the group posted on the SCBWI message board that the group had a couple of openings for people who were interested in writing in rhyme. And so I applied to the group and I sent them some of the poetry stuff that I had been working on for magazines, and they let me in. And it's an amazing group of rhymers, just so supportive and so helpful, and everyone is really good at writing and rhyme and have taught me basically everything that I know. Like I've never really taken a class in this or anything. So I'm so grateful for that group, and just their expertise is so deep and vast. And then my second online group I found through the 12 by 12 picture book writing challenge, which I actually joined in 2012 before it became sort of it's almost, at this point, it's like kind of like a year-long conference that you pay to join. But in 2012, it was mostly just a Facebook group. And then the founder, Julie Headland, would like post monthly things on her blog. And it was really a tight-knit group of people who were all really passionate about writing picture books. And so a group of us formed a critique group, but that's been going ever since. And that's also been so great to kind of grow up alongside those other writers. And they saw, I don't know how many drafts of this story, like probably at least 4 or 5 different versions of this story, and were so helpful along the way too. So that's really great. And then my in-person critique partners, some of them I actually met through 12 by 12, and then they just happened to live close by to me. So we ended up deciding to meet in person, but there's also a great organization where I live in the Boston area called the Writers Loft, and it's in Sherburne, Massachusetts, and they do in-person events and also critique groups. Like there's a weekly picture book critique group that anybody can go to. So I've met some of my in-person critique partners through that group too. So I think I would say, like in a nutshell, kind of networking through existing writing groups has really led to me to meet like some fantastic critique partners who are so helpful. So
yeah, that's really great. I think that you gave a lot of great evidence for, any aspiring writers who might be listening right now, that there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of persistence needed, and you need to ideally have a lot of different critique partners or professionals look at your work, and you don't want to work too much in isolation. So like your story is a really great testament to the way that we don't work as writers in isolation. We need to network with other people to improve our craft. And I would say even now, like, I mean, working on more manuscripts, at least I know that I have to keep working on my craft. It's not like you publish one book and then all of a sudden, it gets easier the next time. It's like you have to go through all those stages and steps, over again each time with a new project. So
yeah,
I was thinking
exactly.
maybe we could branch into a little bit of the promotion that you've been doing, book promotion for your, not only as part of the Soaring 20s PB group, but any other kinds of marketing or, book promotion you've been doing, especially during the pandemic, because a lot of authors who might be tuning in are probably thinking, how difficult it can be to, if it's difficult to get out there right now. So what are the things you've been doing to let people know about your book? Again,
it's such a difficult time right now. And I think, again, I mean, the answer comes back to the networking that I've been doing for, years now, right? So I've now have been in the 12 by 12 group for, since 2012. So that's quite a number of years. So I know tons of people from that group, and that it's such a supportive group. So all those people are kind of out there rooting for me and like tweeting on my behalf, and I really appreciate that. And actually, so the way that I came to join the Soaring 20s group that we formed to help sort of promote all of our picture books, including mine and yours that are debuting in 2020, was through 12 by 12. Like a couple of people I know, Kirsten Larson and Julie Rowanzak, were people that I knew from 12 by 12. So, and they knew that I had a book coming out, and they said, "Oh, we're forming this group. Do you want to join?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." Because I knew that, I'd seen other groups in previous years do the same thing and have a lot of success with it. And some of the things that we do to support each other within that group are to write reviews for each other's books that we post online, request each other's books at our own local libraries. That's really helpful. And just generally sort of supporting each other through all the kinds of questions that you have when you're debuting a book and you don't want to necessarily bother your editor or your publicist or your agent, although all those people are really helpful too. But like, what kind of pen should I use when I sign my books and things like that. It's just nice to have a group of people who are all going through the same thing at the same time. And in our group, we're really lucky to have a few authors who, even though it's their picture book debut, they are already published, in middle grade or something else. So they have a lot of depth of experience to share, which is really good. And then, I've been trying to reach out to bookstores. My local store was fantastic. I had my launch party last night. I had originally planned that as an in-person event. But then obviously, we can't do that right now. And they jumped in. I think they had actually already been doing online events even before the pandemic, I think. But now they've been doing a lot of online events since the pandemic. So they're very sort of experienced with that. So I was pretty lucky that the store that I had happened to choose for my in-person event was able to quickly, migrate to online events too. And so I'm looking for ways to kind of reach out to more bookstores and just get the word out there to do more live events and stuff. I've applied to like literary festivals. Another great opportunity that we in the Soaring 20s kind of jumped right on, which was fantastic, was some of the nerd camps that teachers and librarians attend went virtual because they couldn't do an in-person nerd camp. So that was a fantastic way. We started, I think the first one we did was Missouri, right? And that was awesome because, you know, there's no way that I would have gone to Missouri in person to attend a nerd camp, even though I would have loved to go. But, you know, with the travel
that one
expenses.
wasn't a nerd camp, but that was the Missouri Library Association.
Oh, you're right.
Yes, but yeah,
right.
there were so many.
Association
It's
of
hard
Librarians.
to keep them straight, right? We did so many.
I know. We've done quite a few at this point. And then there was a Connecticut nerd camp and a Pennsylvania nerd camp. So, I mean, the silver lining of the situation that we're in now is that we can virtually connect with more teachers and librarians than we necessarily would have done when things were all live and in person. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is, like, you know, is there a way to have any kind of in-person events at all? And so I haven't done this yet, but I know that there's a few apple orchards in my neck of the woods that do events on the weekends, and they also make cider donuts. So I was thinking, you know, for the theme of my book, that would work out really well. I don't know if any of them are willing to do a story time, but to me, that would be really fun. And I think we could do a safe, like, socially distant live event outside with donuts, which would be really fun to do. So I'm hoping that might happen in the fall, but I mean, it kind of depends on the virus situation too, and how things are here and what seems safe to do, you know?
Yeah,
and I'm
socially
open to
distanced
ideas if anyone has ideas.
Yeah, that sounds great
how
though, a
else to promote
socially
your book.
distanced outdoor event, because I think that, you know, that could be, like you said, depending on how the situation is as we go forward, that could be the new normal to start there before having other in-person events. It might be outdoor events, and
Exactly.
to think about as creators that we might have to change the venues a bit, and
right.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
So I think just thinking of, you know, the theme of your particular book, and, like, does it lend itself to any kind of, you know, event outside of a bookstore? You know, what else? I know that Corey Rosen-Schwartz, who wrote The Three Ninja Pigs, which is about some, like, ninja, you know, it's basically the Three Little Pigs, but told ninja style. Has done tons of events with karate studios and dojos, because, you know, that totally lends itself to her book in particular. So I think that thinking that through, you know, is important when you're trying to, like, come up with creative ways to market your book. So
yeah, that sounds wonderful. And I think my last question would just be if there's anything else that you would like to cover that we haven't talked about yet, since we've covered a lot of ground already. I want to leave that open for you.
I think I would just say, you know, to everyone out there listening, I mean, I know there's probably a lot of writers listening, and I think we're in a really uncertain time, but publishing is a really long game. So, you know, I've seen people posting online like, oh, should I even submit anything right now? It doesn't seem worth it. Like, are publishers buying anything? And some of the publishers have had, you know, furloughs that have affected their editors. And it is a really hard time right now. But also, the things that they're buying now are the things that are going to be published 2 or 3 years from now. And so they really are still buying stuff. And your book is going to, for sure, if your book is coming out right now, it is going to outlast this current sort of situation that we're in. And 5 years from now, you know, hopefully that book will still be out there and available. So I think the message is to just carry on as though, you know, as the best that you can, and try to be creative about it, and you know, keep writing, because there's definitely room for more. And I even though, you know, it seems like a dark time right now, I feel pretty optimistic about the future. So keep going, just keep going.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Like that, I think of it as I'm a runner. So for me, I think of it as it's a marathon, not a sprint. So like you were saying, it's a long road, and you know, even though we're dealing with a lot of things with the pandemic right now, that's not necessarily, you know, the time in which your book's going to be coming out for the projects you're working on right now. So
Exactly.
thank you so much for coming, Carrie. It was wonderful talking with you. If you want to show your book one more time, just so we can get another
Dozens of
visual.
Donuts.
Dozens of Donuts, just out yesterday. So
Yes.
definitely check it out. I've got 3 kids and they love it. My
Oh,
kids
thank you.
5, 7, and 8. So I think it's a great book for that, you know, that full age range and more. I mean, it's a great book. And so definitely check out Carrie's book. Do you want to tell us about any social media or anywhere that listeners can reach out to you?
So I have my website, which is www.carriefinison.com. And I have on there, I have some activities that kids can do. I have, let's see, I showed this yesterday at the lunch, but this is a little design a donut activity that I have up there. So I was telling people yesterday, when I wrote, there's like some stuff that got cut out of the book, but my idea of the donuts that this bear would eat were like salmon donuts, like blueberry donuts, things that like a bear, because I had done all this research about what bears like to eat, and thank God that's out. And now the donuts are just donuts that would also appeal to people, which I think is much more delicious looking. But I thought kids might have fun either researching an animal and designing a donut for that animal based on what it likes to eat, or they could think about just a friend or a member of their family and what that person likes to eat and kind of design a donut for them. And if people do that, they can either print this out from my website or they can just do it on a piece of paper and either post it on social media or email it to me. I don't have a link yet, but I will put up a link today on my website where people can just shoot me an email. I'd love to see those pictures. I think one of the things that I'm kind of craving, and it's really hard, the thing that's most hard to get right now is to like see kids reading your book, right? Mm-hmm. Because we can't have these live events and stuff. So I kind of miss that moment of like seeing some kid read my book and see how they react to it and like where they laugh and where they stop and like look at the picture more closely. I'm kind of missing that. So hopefully some people will do that project and have a little bit of interaction. And yeah, so through my website, I have a newsletter too, if people want to be kept up to date on like future events. I do have a local story time that I'm doing, like virtual story time with a local library in August. And then I'm going to be at the Bath Book Bash in September. I have agreed to do a cooking demo for them. And I'm going to make some donut cookies. So if you look up Bath Book Bash, it's Bath, Maine is the city. That will be happening in September. And I'm sure I'll have other virtual events coming along at some point. And I'll post those on my website and social media and my newsletter. So if you follow me, you'll find them.
Great. So I just want to wrap up by saying that we're both in the Soaring 20s PV group, and we have a website as well. It's soaring20spv.com. You can find that web link if you go to you're in our Instagram account, watching the Instagram live right now. But that link is there. And if you go to our website, you can also sign up for our newsletter for the Soaring 20s PV. We also have, we have actually a monthly newsletter that comes out with the news for the 35 picture book creators that we have in our Soaring 20s PV group. So thanks again for joining us for episode 2, and I hope that we will see you again. Thanks Carrie. Jen.